Welcome into the End of the Money podcast for Saturday, September 30th. I'm Leach, along with Jim Goodman, Keeneland's Director of Mutuals and Simulcasting, as we take a look at the Breeders' Cup preview card up at Belmont Park on Saturday. We'll do the four stakes races that make up an all-stakes pick four, and we'll start in race 7, Jim. It's the Grade 1 Vosburg, the Sprinters, and these are not really deep fields certainly like we saw, say, Kentucky Downs, but they're well-matched groups, I thought. Who did you land on in the Vosburg?
Yeah, they are. I was talking to the Belmont guy a couple of days ago, and they're not getting the fields they used to because a lot of the trainers are not running a prep race and then going to Breeders' Cup in a month. They're training on up to Breeders' Cup. So this is a nice field, but it's not as deep as you might have seen the Vosburg in the past. And I think it's a three-horse race, technically. I'm going to give the edge to El Deal, the 2-horse for Jorge Navarro. The last time out won the Vanderbilt by 8 lengths at Saratoga. Just blew away a nice field, including Austin Banner and Limousine Liberal. So if he repeats that one, I think it may be a 1-horse race. But Navarro had a lot of magic going on this summer. He's 33% trainer this year, and that may have worn off a little bit, so he may not be as hot at Belmont. In the case he's not, I think Takaful could take a big step forward off the second in the Grade 1 Jerkins on August 26th. It's the third race of his form cycle after Kieran decided he was a sprinter, and I think Takaful's going to be a really nice sprinter, and this sets him up well for a Breeders' Cup trip west if he does run well. Jose Ortiz takes it back, ran behind Practical Joke, who's turned out to be one of the best sprinters, one of your favorite horses, shortening up. So I think Takaful has a shot. And Mr. Crow, the 5, takes a huge step up in class, but got 109, 104 buyers last 2 times out. So if Pletcher's ready for him to take a step to Grade 1, he could be a surprise here. If there's a pace meltdown and all these horses go for the lead, don't throw out Stallwalking Dude, the 1. He's not got the back class to win a Grade 1, but he's certainly got the style in case these horses go out too fast. And that is a distinct possibility with those 3 horses I mentioned. But El Deal, the 2, is probably my win pick, but I'd use at least 3 in the pick 4.
Yeah, El Deal's my win pick as well. That was a very impressive race last time, and he's had plenty of time to recover, too, from the 112 buyer. So he's not coming back on any kind of a short rest. He's had a sharp work at Belmont, so I like that he had a work over that track on the 23rd, so last weekend. And the ones you mentioned, I didn't use the Pletcher, just thinking it's maybe a little too ambitious, but those are impressive numbers. I used keying on El Deal, and then I used them with Takaful, Stallwalking Dude, and Weekend Hideaway. Just thinking with Weekend Highway that it looks like there's a lot of speed in here, and Stallwalking Dude and Weekend Hideaway are really about the only closers in the field. So El Deal is the pick for me as well off that 112 buyer last time. I'm going to single him in a pick 4. We'll get to that later, but I'm not real confident in doing that. But price-wise, they've got to make a decision. 8th race is the Grade 3 Pilgrim. This is for 2-year-olds on the turf going a mile on the 16th. I didn't like anybody a lot in here. I finally came to Voting Control. Just ran the one time for Chad Brown, but he won. It was 20 days, coming back in 20 days. The runner-up was well ahead of the third-place finisher, so I like that. And, it's Chad Brown on the turf, 2-year-old. That's certainly a lot to like there. There's a couple of Pletchers that I think I will use, the 4 and the 6. And then the 8 Evaluator, I think, didn't run well last time but could come back and run better, has a little more experience than some of these others. But I'm going to take Voting Control to win the Pilgrim and go a little deep in the pick 4. How about you?
I came up with the same horse, even though my comments on paper says this one looks wide open. All of them except Looking Ready have good turf efforts. More Than Ready Offspring can take to the surface, so I don't think you throw him out because of that. But they're all 2-year-olds. Who's going to jump up? And I'm going to go deep in the pick 4, may even take all of them. But my top 4 picks in this order would be Voting Control. What I liked about Voting Control was that first effort was at a mile at Belmont, and he's stuck in the 9-hole and was 8.5 lengths out of it at first call and won. Looked like he wanted more distance, so the mile 16th ought to suit him. And of course, Chad Brown's one of the best trainers in the world for turf horses. So, Voting Control would be my pick here. But I also think Maraud for Todd Pletcher, who had a decent beginning at Saratoga. I can't pronounce this. Seabach, Seabhac.
Not sure on that one either.
How do you pronounce that? Sometimes I don't pick them just because I can't pronounce them, and you make me feel bad.
Seaback, maybe. Just leave the H out.
Yeah, Seaback. That horse has been out twice, and they moved him up to with anticipation off a narrow maiden loss. So still a maiden in a Grade 3, but obviously he thinks a lot of this horse. And then Desert Storm, the one horse who ran behind Murad, I think with Ortiz up, can improve for Rudy. But all of them can improve, so I'm a little deep in the pick 4. I'm going to agree with you, though, on voting control as probably the shortest price in the field.
9th race, Grade 1 Beldame for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares at 1 1/8, which is a 1-turn at Belmont. Who did you land on in the Beldame?
Well, you talked about singling the first race. I'm going to single this one. I think Elate, if she runs back to the Alabama and the coaching Oaks, CCA Oaks, behind Abel Tasman. I mean, Abel Tasman would be 1 to 5 in here. I'm assuming Elate might be even money or 4 to 5. I think if she repeats those, everybody else is running for second. If she does happen to not fire, I think Bishop's Pond, the 3-horse with a lot of natural speed. And the Eskin for Money is probably the classiest filling the race outside of Elate, the 7-horse. But I really like Elate in here a lot, and I'm going to single her in the pick 4. Bill Mott on the inside should have won 2 in a row at Saratoga. Just barely got beat by Abel Tasman, and I think she comes back and wins the Beldame.
We're on the same one here as well. I like Elate. I didn't see any standouts among the olders, so I think she can take on the olders here and win. She's had 4 good works since the Alabama, but I'm not going to single her. She's going to be such a low price that if she doesn't win, then could certainly inflate the pick 4 if you could hit on one of these others. I think Bishop's Pond is a real live one in here. The 3 money's on Charlotte, has been hot, not impressive figures, but still has been making regular visits to the winner's circle, so I'll use her too. And the 7 Eskin for Money, but Elate's going to be my win pick. And in the 10th race, the Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, I thought this was a really tough one. I ended up coming to Beach Patrol, and the reason was Joel Rosario. I thought last time in the Arlington Million that Rosario maybe made the difference on this horse. They switched to him, and he's a strong finisher, and this horse has had trouble finishing and getting past second place. And Rosario got him to the win in the Arlington Million, and I think sometimes a jockey change is just a great fit for a particular horse, and I think that could be the case here. He's got good speed in a 1.5-mile race, which is always an asset. But Money Multiplier, Sadler's Joy, the Gray Gatsby coming from Europe, Fanciful Angel, who's into Chad Brown's barn after a big runner-up in the Arlington Million. All of those I would include within the race, and I'll even go a little deeper when we get to the pick 4 in here. The one thing I noticed is that I think there's only 2 horses in the race that have won at 1.5 miles. One of them is a long shot for Mott, Channelmaker, and the other one's Sadler's Joy, who's won 3 times at 1.5 miles. I don't think anybody else has actually won a 1.5 mile race. But Beach Patrol for me in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. How about you?
I thought you were going to miss my angle. Sadler's Joy is the winner of this race. I'm telling you, there's no other horse. He's 3 for 4 at the distance. He beat Money Multiplier in the Sword Dancer at 1.5 miles. So Money Multiplier is the other one that had a great effort at 1.5 miles. Even though he hadn't won, he's had 2 seconds and has been very competitive. So I think it's a big deal that Beach Patrol hasn't even raced at 1.5 miles. I think it's a big deal that Oscar Performance is 3 for 3 at Belmont but hasn't raced at 1.5 miles. So I'm glad you got that angle in there so you could steal my thunder, because that was my number one quote about the entire race. The one thing I think about the race, though, is that this thing is a Breeders' Cup quality race.
Oh, yes.
You have 4 Grade 1 winners, and 3 of them are coming off of Grade 1 wins in their last race. I doubt if the Breeders' Cup will be, or the Breeders' Cup turf will be that good. So this one's great. Belmont lucked out here. They got a great field. I'm going to go with Sadler's Joy. I think the distance 3 for 4, the only entrant with multiple wins at the distance, and some of the others have very little experience or no experience at 1.5 miles. Oscar Performance, I am going to give him a shot because he is 3 for 3 at Belmont in great form with a 3-race win streak. And he ought to like the stretch out, but 1.5 miles is a big difference between 1.25 miles and 1.25 miles. Beach Patrol, I agree with you 100% with Rosario. I didn't really like the fact that they took Giroux off the horse. He had run well, but he hadn't won. with Giroux in a long time, and Florent was cold at Saratoga, so I do agree that Rosario is a great fit. Mr. Multiplier, you got to throw him in there, and then you can also throw in Ascend as a Grade 1 winner, even though he lost to Arlington Million, only got beat by a length and a quarter to a couple of these. Fanciful Angel, second North America, can probably improve the 9-horse, and Mucktal, the 8, second-time North America. So I'm going to go way deep in this one, but I think I'm going to bet Sadler's Joy to win. I'm going to key him on top of the trifectas.
Yeah, I'm wary of the no 1.5-mile races for Beach Patrol. I'm kind of locking in on that Rosario angle, but I think that's a very, very good point. Now let's go to the pick 4. It's all stakes. Starts in the 7th. I'm going to single El Deal in the first leg. Then I'm going to go 4 deep, the 4 horses I mentioned in the second leg. In the Belle Dame, going to take Elate, and the other 3 I mentioned, Bishop's Pond, Money's on Charlotte, Eskin for Money. And then I'm going 6 deep in the Turf Classic. The ones that I mentioned, plus I'm going to add Ascend and Mocktail as well. So that's that might even be 7 deep. Yeah, that's 7 deep actually for me in that race. So it is, if you want to cut the ticket down, then Ascend and Mocktail were the last 2 that I added. But I'm singling El Deal, so it's 1 by 4 by 4 by 7. So it's a little pricier than usual. And if you want to pare it down, I'd say throw out Mocktail and then next throw out Ascend and go a little smaller in that last leg. What about your ticket?
I've got an even pricier ticket here. I'm going to go 3 deep in the first leg with El Deal the 2, Tackle the 4, and Mr. Crow the 5. And if you want to cut this back at the end, I would drop off Mr. Crow. I think it's 2-horse race here. I agree with you on El Deal, but I also like Tackle in case El Deal doesn't quite fire. So let's go 3 deep, 2, 4, 5. I'm going to take all in the Pilgrim. I can't narrow it down more than 4, so I'm just going to take all and hope one of these prices improves. Single, Elate the 1 in the 9th race, the Belle Dame. And I'm also going to go 7 deep in the last race. I think it's, and if you can afford it, go all, because there's only 11 horses in there. But I can toss 4 of them with some confidence. So I'm going to go 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Money Multiplier, Oscar Performance, Sadler's Joy, Beach Patrol, Ascend, McCall, and Fanciful Angel. I'm going to go 7 deep. So that's an $84 ticket. If you take off Mr. Crow in the first leg, that makes it a $56 ticket, which is similar to what you've got, I think.
And if you're fortunate enough to make a big score in the pick 4, the Keeneland Select and others have kicked in the new federal tax withholding rules, right, Jim?
Yeah, the best news for horse players in years and years and years. The NTRA lobbied for this for a long time to try to get Congress to support something, and they finally a couple years ago went the regulatory way, and the IRS, believe it or not, agreed with them that it was an egregious act for horse players to have been forced to pay income tax on a $600 hit. And the old rules basically said that if you hit something at 300 to 1 or better and paid more than $600, it had to be an IRS ticket and you had to sign for it. And if it was over $5,000, there was money actually withheld, 25% federal tax and 6% state tax in Kentucky. What's happened now is they've redefined it so that if you play a ticket with multiple accounts, so multiple dollars, so that we paid a $56 ticket, it's a 50-cent pick 4, and the old rules made you 300 to 1 plus $600 based on a 50-cent wager. The new rules are so much better because if you put this on one ticket and you spend $56, it has to pay 300 times that for you to have to sign for it. So that's over $19,000. So you could hit this ticket for $56. It would pay $10,000, and it would not be a signer. It is incredible news for horse players. If you haven't looked at it, go to the NTRA website, look at the rules. It's going to eliminate well over 90% of all the signers that we ever had. So play it online. When you play online and you play multiple tickets, if it's the same account, it counts as one ticket. So if you spend $56 on 4 or 5 different combinations on the pick 4, it still has to multiply by 300 for it to be a signer. So it's incredible news for horse players. And Keeneland Select and Keeneland and the simulcast facility at Red Mile are all compliant today, the very first day that we could put it into play.
So best of luck on hitting one of those this weekend, and we'll be back to try to find another one the next week for the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.